Welcome back to the Rhody Impact Podcast. I'm your host, Connor Lewis, and today I have the honor of interviewing Gina Sperry, Associate Athletic Director here at the University of Rhode Island. Gina, would you like to introduce yourself? Tell us a little about yourself before we jump in.
Sure. First of all, I want to thank Connor. It's a pleasure to be here as well. So as Connor said, I'm Gina Sperry, University of Rhode Island Associate Athletic Director, and also the title of Senior Woman Administrator as well. And I've been here, I think I'm going on my 23rd year at URI.
That doesn't sound right.
Yeah, it is.
Well, Gina, again, thank you for being here. You're sort of the expert on Title IX. That's what people like Jeff like to say. So can you tell us a little bit about Title IX, the basics of what we should know, I should know, because I don't know anything about anything, so and what everyone else should know.
Sure, absolutely. So first of all, I will definitely say that I'm not an expert at Title IX. I think there are a lot of people, fortunately, we have a lot of people in the field that are lawyers, right, that can really understand. People like to think that it's a really easy thing to understand Title IX. It is actually pretty complicated. So I'm always very thankful for the lawyers that we have in our lives that can help us to understand this too. And I'm going to be really specific because I think the wording is really important.
Yeah, 100%. You brought notes. So
I'm just going to read something.
Absolutely.
So first of all, Title IX is a law. I'll say that first and foremost, all right, from 1972. And not only is it a law, but it's the right thing to do, all right? So the law actually states the following. So as I said before, Title IX was enacted in 1972 as law. And this is what it states. No person in the United States shall, on the basis of sex, be excluded from participation in or be denied the benefits or be subjected to discrimination under any educational program or activity receiving federal financial assistance.
Okay.
I'll talk about it from a perspective of athletics, because that's the world that I've lived in, that's the profession that I've been in. But it pertains to everything. It's everything on our college campus, right? Anything in our public schools, anything that's federally funded. Mm-hmm. So it's, at the university level, it's research level, it's women in positions at universities. It's not just athletics. But it's interesting that a lot of people always think it's just about athletics. Yeah. But it certainly is not. So from an athletics standpoint, when we look at Title IX in athletics, they're what they call the three prongs. So the first prong is participation. So the opportunities to participate. And so at the university, we have enrollment, right? How many students, how many men, how many women students that we have enrolled at universities. Yeah. And so with Title IX in athletics, our participation numbers, or in other words, we like to refer to it as our roster numbers, like how many women student athletes we have, how many men student athletes we have. Right. They have to be in line within 1% of what the enrollment numbers are at the university. Right. So for example, if we have 54% enrollment at the University of Rhode Island and 46% on the men's side, right? Our opportunities or participation or roster numbers have to reflect within 1% of that 54%. So when we look at roster numbers, we have to make sure that we have enough opportunities for women to compete in college athletics. Right. And you may very well know this too. So it was a really exciting week for us that we had our first women's lacrosse game, our first inaugural game, right, on Monday. And that sport, our participation numbers for women were getting way out of sync. Okay. So we were at almost like 4 and 5%. Oh, really? But not
so like a violation of, I see.
Right. So our athletic director, our senior staff, we added the sport of women's lacrosse. So we started playing that. That helps with our roster numbers. Yeah. That's just one piece of it. We still have work to do, but that better aligns us with that first prong. Right. The second prong when we talk about athletics is relates to scholarships. So we do a great job here with scholarships in terms that our scholarships should be 50-50. So the number of offerings that we have for athletic scholarship for men and women, those allotments are the same. Mm-hmm. So we have to always be looking at those participation numbers and also those roster numbers and also those scholarship opportunities.
Okay, I got you.
And the third prong, this is probably the most difficult one. So it refers to treatment. Mm-hmm. I call it the laundry list. So that would be things like looking at what your budgets are, how you fund each of your men's and women's programs in terms of recruiting dollars, things like access to athletic training, access to academic advising and tutors for student athletes, those types of things. What are your salaries for your men's and women's programs, your coaches? How many assistant coaches do you have for your men's and women's programs? So that's a big laundry list. What does your team travel look like? What does that budget line look like?
Right.
That's the hardest one to manage. And we still have work to do. We're not the only ones. I'm not minimizing that. We still have work to do in college athletics.
As a whole, you mean?
Compliance. As a whole.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
As a whole across the country. Being in compliance with Title IX.
Yeah.
And making sure that we're always looking at that. And sometimes people say, well, isn't that your role or the role of the women in the department to look at that?
Oh, I see.
And it really isn't. I mean, way back in the day, way before my time, it was really on the women to do that. But now we have allies in our athletic administrators that are men, our athletic director, with Thor, that we're looking at those things, and we have to ask ourselves, are we making sure that we're providing the same opportunities for our women's teams as we do for our men's teams? So I think that's a really important piece. So we have a lot of men that are our allies today.
Yeah.
And as I said before, we have lots of work to do. We're not there. We'll continue to do that work and to always to be able to monitor that.
Yeah. So you mentioned Title IX started in 1972.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell me a little bit about the history of it? Because I don't think many people are aware. Who was important? Why was it important? Obviously, it was important, but all the works. Just give me the works.
So I like to tell a few stories when I talk about prior to 1972, right? So I was born prior to 1972. So
no.
I was. I look back, and when I think about Title IX, I think about the words that come to mind for me are being grateful of the women that came before me.
Yeah.
Because they really paved the road. They fought the good fight. And I'll tell one story. So Ellie Lemire was back in the day when you had separate programs. You had a women's athletics program and a men's athletics program, right?
Yeah.
So Ellie was the first athletic director for women, all right, at URI, and then they had an athletic director for the men's programs. And so she had to always fight that fight to make sure that we had equal opportunities for women, the women's teams, like we do on the men's teams. But I go back even farther than that, okay, before that, where this is what blows, like women today, this blows their mind when we tell them these stories. There were women back in the day that on a college campus, they would practice at midnight or 1 and 2 in the morning, so the administration wouldn't know that they were practicing. Because if they got caught practicing and playing a sport, oftentimes they were threatened with being removed from school and being expelled from school. But that was way before Title IX.
Like, why? Like that's an obvious question, but
because they shouldn't be doing it. Like, why are you doing that? Why are women playing sports? Women don't play sports. That's not the role of women.
Okay, I got you.
So, I mean, like, it blows your mind, right?
Yeah, a little bit. I didn't know that. Yeah, wow, okay.
So those are, some of those stories.
Right.
For me, I'll always refer, again, I said I was grateful for the women that came before me. So in high school, I was a cross-country distance runner, ran track and field, played every sport that I could in high school. And I remember wanting to run cross-country, and we did not have a women's cross-country team, a girls' cross-country team. So because of Title IX, this is in the late 70s, because of Title IX, I was able to run and compete on the boys' team.
Oh.
Yes.
Really? Oh.
So imagine that. And I'm from a small town in the Midwest.
Right.
And so I would go travel with the boys' team, right?
Yeah.
And I was the only girl.
How did they treat you? Because I feel like that's kind of like a kind of a world breaker for them. So
yeah. So I have to tell you, at first it was somewhat hostile. Like when you you toe the line.
Yeah.
The boys are kind of looking at like, what's a girl doing here? It's all the boys. You're the only girl in this race, right?
Yeah.
And so at first it was a little bit hostile. There was always that competitive edge where, I would hear their coaches yelling at them, "Don't let a girl beat you."
Oh.
And for me, it wasn't about beating the boys in a race. It was about the opportunity to compete. I just wanted to race, and I wanted to do well, and I wanted to win. And so that's sort of my personal side of kind of where we got to in Title IX and how it impacted me as I continue to be in this field as long as I've been in.
Wow. That's a crazy story. I just want to ask you one more question about that.
Yeah.
Because I'm still kind of mind blown a little bit by it. Was there any blowback from like other schools? Like I know, like obviously the guys on your team didn't care for it very much, to be nice. But
Sure.
Was there any blowback from like other schools? Were other athletic directors of high school saying anything about that?
I probably don't remember at that point, because if they were, they weren't saying it to me.
Oh, I see.
They might have been talking amongst themselves. Maybe the coaches, I don't know, or perhaps they were like, hey, this is kind of a really great thing that you're having girls be able to compete here. So I don't know some of the politics with that. But what I do know is there wasn't much that they could say what they wanted to say, positive or negative, but there wasn't anything they really could do about it, because that was after the law was enacted in 1972. Right. So that had to happen. And again, I'm just always grateful and appreciative of the women that came before me and paved the way for me to be able to do that. And then, later on, progress through high school and be able to be afforded an athletic scholarship to go to college. And so that did not exist prior to Title IX. There weren't athletic scholarships for women.
Right.
There weren't even a lot of opportunities, or very few.
I mean, you mentioned they couldn't even practice.
I see. I mean, the NCAA didn't even sponsor sports for women back in those days. It was the AIAW. They sort of started their own national championships aside from the NCAA, because there wasn't NCAA championships for women until much later on.
Yeah.
Even when I competed in high school, our cross country team, we went to nationals 3 times, but it was the AIAW. It was not the NCAA.
Oh, okay.
Because they had not, and that was, early 80s, so still well after Title IX was enacted.
I see. So when are you selling your life story to become a movie?
Yeah.
Or...
But you'll hear a lot of, like, even if you talk to our coaches here, or even throughout all of the coaches across the nation, you'll hear all these different stories.
Right.
And unfortunately, some of those women that were really the trailblazers and came before us so that we have everything we have today, there's fewer and fewer of them. So we have to make it a point to continue to tell their stories. Because young women and young men today, they're like, really? That happened? I can't believe that happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, to shift gears a little bit, this is hopefully coming out before Women's History Month begins. With that being said, what can we do to support these young athletes during the month of Women's History Month?
Sure. I think just in supporting women in sports in general, what's really important is to get out to women's events, whatever those events may be, whether they're games or, a local road race that's benefiting women and women's event. And I'll say this too, I have a lot of nephews that are now girl dads, right? So, and I say to them, get your girls to sports, right?
Absolutely.
Get them to clinics, get them involved in things, and inspire them that they can do this. And to be able to do that, we host a clinic, a track and field clinic here that our head coach, Lori Fiat-Melnick, sponsors every year. And then National Girls and Women's Sport Day, which is annually in February. Mm-hmm. And so we have a big clinic. We have about 300 youth that come here and participate in that. And all of our women's teams, they set up stations, and they spend about 10 minutes each station. And we have boys that come to that, which is great. I mean, we're never going to say that a boy can't participate.
Of course.
Because we want them to see their sisters participating and their aunts participating. Yeah. So get out. Encourage the women in your lives, the girls in your lives, to be a part of sports and to not be afraid to participate. And it just builds so many things and helps them to be such stronger women as they grow throughout their life, and to be able to be great leaders, and it gives them the skills to be able to do that. So get out in the community and support women all that you can.
Absolutely. And I think you mentioned people becoming girl dads. Mm-hmm. Am I using that term right? My father, he was a big basketball guy, and my sister recently started doing track, and she's been a great hurdler. Mm-hmm. And he has literally become so fired up whenever we talk about track. It's awesome to see, and so I can really relate to what you're saying a lot. I guess I want to plug lacrosse, the women's lacrosse team, because I talked to the coaches, I interviewed them, they're all great. Brand new team, and they're winning. What are they, 2-0, 3-0 at this point?
Yeah,
they're doing great. Yeah. So I think that's really important, and I think everyone should be supporting any sport, really. I mean, as many events as you can get out to, you should. Hopefully this comes out before then, but February 26th is an important day. Sure. Because you were always hosting a panel, the future of Title IX. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us some details about that, whatever you know about that event and what we should know going in?
Sure. I know that it's happening on the 26th 6th.
Yeah, I believe so.
I think
it's a Wednesday.
A Wednesday at 3 o'clock.
Yeah.
Up in Edwards, I think it's.
I think so.
I think, looking at the panel that is on there, I think, you have a lawyer that's going to be involved in there. You have someone from ESPN, which is really exciting.
Really cool. That'll get people there. ESPN,
that will definitely get people there. And I think to think about it, it's more than just athletics. Again, as I said about it in the beginning, it's about Title IX in the educational system. And, I believe that URI's Gender and Women's Studies program is sponsoring it, along with, I think, maybe Communication Studies is sponsoring it. So kudos to them for hosting this event. And we're sort of partnering and be a part of that. And I hope that we'll have our coaches, our student athletes go out. I mentioned this before. It's really important that we continue to educate ourselves. And I don't want to get political, but in the climate that we're in right now, in terms of the things that are going on in our nation's capital, and the potential impact to the Department of Education, which is where Title IX falls under, we have to continue to fight for that. Imagine a world where Title IX and the law goes away, and then women and people that are underrepresented, people of color, no longer are required by law to have opportunities to participate in things that are federally funded. So we are at a pivotal point to educate yourself. I would encourage everybody to go to this. To knowledge is power. To understand what Title IX means and to understand what's at risk if things
go south.
If they do go south, it's a really pivotal, really important time.
And again, there's going to be some important people there, right? So I think it's good for everybody. Again, can you repeat where it is? I don't actually know. If you know, I don't know if you have.
I'm not quite sure. I think it's. I'm not sure if it's in Chaffee or Edwards, but I think it's in a pretty good sized lecture hall. I think they're encouraging. I would see that a lot of classes would attend that. And then certainly, I really hope that we have representation from athletics. Really, really important panel, really important topic. Yeah,
absolutely. And again, to wrap this up, Gina, I want to thank you for coming on and taking time out of your very busy schedule to come and talk to me. I know I'm an intern, but I really appreciate your time. And I think we can all appreciate the hard work you're doing as far as Title IX goes and supporting women's athletics. So thank you very much, Gina. I have been your host, Connor Lewis, signing off.